we're really zigging and zagging here because I'm now picking up the action at an earlier point. And this is where the people are talking to Oedipus. And you're now going to see how the timing of what they say is not good timing. And if I may concentrate on the actual problem, the actual pollution, look at the way this is described here by the speaker, who is the priest of Zeus. So he should know what he's saying, right? The city, as you yourself see, is very much afflicted with a seastorm. And it cannot lift its head any longer out of the depths of the murderous churning of the sea. Okay, so there we have the metaphor of the sea storm that threatens the shipwreck of the ship of state.
Which is everybody, right?
Which is everybody. And of course, the idea is that the king is the steersman. Notice I don't say helmsman because then people think of a wheel, and I'm thinking of a steering oar. Right. But the number one image for the ruler of a community, if you're going to engage in the metaphor of shipwreck, is a steering oar. But now let's push on. So we've had metaphor number one. Now we go to metaphor number two, which is the wilting garden, shall we say. Right. So something that makes things wilt, pruning, has descended on the buds containing the fruit of the land. Yes, making things wilt, pruning. It has also descended on the herds of cattle grazing in the pastures and whatever is produced from women, which has become lifeless, stillbirths.
Right. And so, I mean, this passage is really making clear the association between these two metaphors.
Yes, yes. And in a sense, I wanted us to appreciate first that there is a pollution. But now we see that the drama from the very beginning is articulating how to visualize this pollution in two ways. And to repeat, it's the sea storm that threatens to wreck the ship of state and the garden that has wilted.
Why do we need two metaphors in order to do this?
Well, I would say one reason is that these two metaphors are the basic repertoire of how to talk about Dikē, justice in an absolutized sense. Because you remember we saw that Dikē in a garden means that the gardener is pruning and keeping the rows of trees straight and doing all those things that make nature acculturated. Okay, so that's one visualization of Dikē, and the other has to do with the very meaning of the word, which is direction, straight line, as opposed to a crooked line.
Which is so important in this play, right? This idea of straight or crooked.
It's everything, and almost every other sentence you read will have to do with how Oedipus is supposed to be the straightener of the path, the straightener of the path of the ship, or just the person who prunes the plants and who, may I say it in Latin, the director. That's what director means in Latin. That's how we get it, by way of borrowing from Latin.
And so is it that the straightness leads to the fertility?
The straightness leads to the fertility, and as we saw in an earlier hour, if you say, I prune a sorb apple tree, the way to say it in Greek is I straighten it. Okay. So it's there.
Can I also ask then about Oedipus in terms of his feet, right? And what is the association between people who have trouble walking and, let's say, maybe their own virility?
So here's the problem for Oedipus. Since from infancy, there was something wrong with his feet. And according to one myth, it's because his mother had pierced his ankles with a brooch. That meant that he has a swollen foot or a deformed foot. Whatever it is, he can't walk straight. And I still remember a great classics professor called Jean-Pierre Vernant who was trying to illustrate this in a lecture. And so he would get on the stage and he would start wobbling across the stage. So the wobbling tyrant, a tyrant can't walk a straight line. And in a sense, he is destined not to walk straight because of his foot. But there's so many other myths. Like there's one myth where we know that somebody who wants to expose their children, that is to say, I can't raise them, I'm too poor. So you take them to the wilderness and you just leave them there, and maybe Mother Nature will take care of them, maybe not. In one city, the law is you can do this only when you're so poor and you're so starving that your feet start swelling. Because in the ancient world, swelling feet are a symptom of reaching the very extremes of starvation.
Wow.
So there's so many of these myths that converge on the figure of Oedipus. And I can't resist, maybe as a little footnote,
Yes.
is a folk etymology of Oedipus is the one who knows the feet. And this has to do with the riddle about what walks on 4 feet in infancy,
Right.
2 feet in adulthood, and then 3 feet in old age. And of course, when you think of the 3-footed old man walking with a cane, that's another figure, when you see it in dance and song, is the idea of zigzagging, not being able to walk straight. There's certain kinds of old man dances that put a premium on this idea that the old man with the cane can't walk straight.
Yeah. Well, I'm super interested in the idea of feet, right?
So
and standing.
yes.
And so.
There's so many things. And when we say feet, it's also steps made with the feet, which is dance steps. Because, of course, all of this is stylized in the ritual complex of drama where everything is acted out in motor activity, which is a better way to think of dance.
So we should also be thinking about the steps of the chorus.
The steps of the chorus.
Being
And
done correctly, and that's going to guide things.
And I'm convinced that there is a reenactment of the idea of limping and wobbling, even in the dance steps of the chorus. Yes.